Thank you for joining us this afternoon for our Tools and Resources training webinar on EPA's CompTox Chemicals Dashboard. The dashboard is a first-stop shop for chemistry, toxicology, and exposure information for over 875,000 chemicals. And the information is used by federal agencies, state agencies, international governments, and industries to make decisions about chemicals related to human health and the environment. Today's training webinar will provide an overview of the dashboard for new users, as well as demonstrate some new functionality and data for veteran users. The first part of the webinar will provide a general overview of the dashboard, and then the second portion will be a step-by-step tutorial on how to use the dashboard, followed by a Q&A session. If you have a question, please go ahead and type it into the Q&A chat pod on the webinar. And once the presentation has ended, we will go through as many of those questions as time allows. So I'm really pleased to introduce Dr. Antony Williams with EPA ORD's Center for Computational Toxicology and Exposure. And he is going to present for us today. So Tony, I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Very much for the introduction. I greatly appreciate it. Hope everybody is staying safe where they are, and I appreciate the opportunity to present on the work that we've been doing for the past few years. And the dashboard's been online for about 4.5 years now. We are presently working to release a new version in July, and that will mostly be an expansion of the data. So the problem that we're trying to deal with is the fact that there is so much data around, and there are so many chemicals that we have to consider in terms of trying to either model toxicity, deal with property data that we may have some of the data available, but we may not have for many other chemicals. There are so many tens of thousands of chemicals to concern ourselves with that we just can't study one at a time and cannot pull all of these data together because much of it doesn't exist. So we're trying to come up with ways that we can use informatics to gather data, put it into one place so that it's accessible to the community, and use our modeling skills and approaches to extend what is available experimentally and make it available through an informatics application. And certainly doing this as fast as we possibly can as we become aware of new chemicals in the environment that are potential risks for human health is one of the major challenges. So the first stop shop that we've developed, and we call it a first stop shop rather than a one-stop shop, and one stop would be rather insulting to all of the other efforts going on in the world, because there are so many good teams that are doing their best to pull together data to build other models. We want to encourage people to think of us as the first place to come to try and gather data. And we've also built a link farm that takes you out to many of these other rich resources that are available online today. So it is a centralized location for data. We are growing the data literally daily. We have full-time curators who add to the data, and we do update this on a fairly regular basis. We've been doing it every 6 months. The data includes chemistry, so chemical structures, descriptions of those chemicals in terms of property data, exposure information regarding what products those chemicals might be might be contained in, what type of functional use those chemicals have. We've been pulling together hazard data from multiple databases, and we've been measuring data both in vitro data, so in vitro bioactivity data, as well as doing things like toxicokinetic studies. And this application pulls all of that together. So not only do we have all of the experimental data, as I said, but now we can build models using our QSAR-based approaches, quantitative structure-activity relationships. Many of you will have heard of that, as well as many other predictive models around the bioactivity data. Everything I'm about to show you is accessible to anybody in the world, no registration, no call to sign up and be approved. It's simply an open website, and we are trying our best to be a part of this shifting environment in science called FAIR, which is making our data findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So anybody can use our data for the purposes of their own research. Certainly, we're trying to make it easy to use, easy to access, and easy to consume into your own systems. So a quick overview. This 875,000 chemical collection is both chemical structures as well as more complex chemicals where we cannot give you a chemical structure, but it certainly is a chemical. We can characterize it. Polymers are an example. Complex mixtures, creosote, olive oil, many of the fragrances and scents can be complex mixtures, etc. We have the data for these. We have the integration to all of the bioactivity data that we've been measuring for well over a decade. So many of you will have heard of the ToxCast and Tox21 work that's been going on for over a decade. The consumer products, as I mentioned. So we are working hard to extract data from safety data sheets, from databases regarding specific consumer products and pulling that together into the database, linking out to these, not only our own agency websites, but also to things like the National Institutes of Health websites, many of the European and Asian websites that have come up. We all have our own skills and foci, but by linking to them, we're helping you get access to all of their work too. Not only the data aspect of this in terms of the chemicals and associated experimental and predicted data, but also the literature. What literature articles are discussing these individual chemicals. Doing this for one chemical is challenging enough, but we've built a batch capability so that if you have 1,000 chemical names or 1,000 chemical abstracts numbers, CAS numbers as they're known, we allow you to search for thousands of chemicals and harvest this information also. We make the data downloadable for reuse and repurposing in your own systems. We're willing to work with you to provide you as much of the data as we can in a consumable format. And there are many, many features. At this point, a demo, a deep dive demo can be hours because we will be dealing with it from different use contexts. And there are multiple tools embedded into this. We will only have time to go over a few of these in detail. So it is a single application, but it integrates both searching, so search on a chemical name, CAS number, synonym, but you can also search on a type of product or even a gene to get to the bioactivity data. We will highlight toxicity data that is available in tabular form that you can consume and download. So you're not copying and pasting from websites. We're giving it you in formats that you can use and repurpose. Bioactivity data on chemicals, so thousands of chemicals through hundreds and hundreds of assay endpoints. We have built-in informatics searches that make things easy for you to do. So if you're interested in a particular chemical, then you can find that chemical. But if you're interested in things similar to it in a chemical sense, then we can give you all types of searches automatically, including chemical similarity. Read across, so many people now are making use of the fact that for particular chemicals, we can look for chemicals that are related in structure space as well as toxicity space and bioactivity. So how many chemicals are behaving the same or similarly in terms of bioactivity, for example, and have similar chemical structures. So this is a read-across approach. This is showing you the integration to the literature searches, and we've integrated both to Google-based literature searches as well as PubMed, which is a very powerful approach, of course. And then, as I commented, the batch search itself. Copy-paste 1,000, 5,000 CAS numbers and names, and then we will pull the data together. This overview is going to be very general, but there are tens of presentations given on this application that are available from the EPA's website, Figshare website, where we put all of our presentations, and the URL here will identify what's available. They're all available for you to download and review. And my contact information, should you wish to follow up with me after this, I'm more than willing to talk to you individually and try and help you make the best of the data that are available. I would point one thing out, that when we originally brought up this application, it was called the chemistry dashboard, because the chemistry group were the primary ones focusing on this, and we were building a resource primarily for chemistry. And it is now morphed into being about chemicals, because we've integrated biological data, toxicity data, and now it's a more generic CompTox chemicals dashboard. But that is the publication that's available. So I'm going to dive us directly into the application. And if you type in comptox.epa.gov, it's going to bring you to the portal. Now, there are numerous tools that we have built over the years. Some of you may be aware of something called the ToxCast dashboard or the EDSP21 dashboard. These are historical tools that at this point we have retired and pushed all of the capability into the chemicals dashboard. It has become the centralized hub, replacing many of the tools we built historically. So clicking on that, this takes you into this interface. So I mentioned it's a search interface. There are 3 tabs. We will come back to chemicals. That's where we're going to spend most of our time, is talking about chemicals directly. But I just want to point out product use categories. So here I might be interested in hair. So it could be ethnic hair care, bleach, hair color. And each of these is going to get me access to the set of chemicals that we've been able to identify as being part of a specific product category. I kind of like to use the example diaper. And if I go into diapers, it is loaded here, the set of chemicals that you would find in diapers, and from the work that we've done doing the extraction. I'm going to go back to the home page. We also have this other search called assay gene. So many of you may be aware of the work that's been going on in the agency for a number of years now regarding endocrine disruption. So specific genes that you might be interested in would be the ESR gene. And here we see both a set of assays that are probing that particular gene, as well as all assays that are associated with that gene. So you can do both assay name as well as gene mappings. Let's go back to the chemicals, because that's where we're going to learn the general benefits of the overall tool. So this is a type-ahead search. To date, on the public site, we do not yet have the ability for you to do structure and substructure search, but we have built that as a prototype, and the intention is to give you structure, substructure search in the future. If you have an interest, please follow up with me on that, and I will be able to show you what that prototype looks like. But many of us are going to work with CAS numbers, names, synonyms, trade names, etc., etc. So a type-ahead search. Let me think about a particular CAS number. As I type, it is giving me this list of particular CAS numbers, and I happen to know that 80057 is bisphenol A. So I can now select this particular chemical, and it will open up the page on bisphenol A. But maybe you don't know the CAS number off the top of your head. Maybe you want to look for bisphenol. So now I've typed in bisphenol, and we can see there's a list of names that contain bisphenol. So bisphenol AF, B, E, etc., etc. But I'm interested in bisphenol A. So I'm going to select that particular chemical, and it's now going to load a view of the data. On the left-hand side, we have a set of individual subtabs that we will be diving into one at a time to show the type of data that we have available. And on the right-hand side, we have what we call accordions that help you navigate both across the application itself, so inside the web page and all of its data, as well as out across the entire global internet for information about this chemical. Let's show you how. So some people may be suspicious of Wikipedia content and say that you need to be very cautious with it. Myself and a group of other dedicated scientists over the years have worked really hard to try and elevate Wikipedia data around chemicals. So we're very clear that we can load this with a correct mapping to Wikipedia. this is a bisphenol A story, and we can click here to read the Wikipedia page. And there's benefits to immediately seeing how a chemical like this can be used. Intrinsic properties, these are standard in terms of a chemical structure. So when you have a chemical structure, of course, you can count number of carbons, hydrogens, oxygens, and now you have a formula. It's not a prediction, it's just a count, simple count. But with formulae and masses, now you have built an application with information that can help people who do analytical science. So for those people, for example, that go out into the environment, run LCMS, GCMS analyses, using targeted or non-targeted mass spectrometry approaches, having formulae and mass available can be very beneficial in terms of doing chemical identification. And just a couple of quick things to show you how things knit together. In this case, we have the molecular formula for bisphenol A, and the question would be, how many other chemicals have that particular formula? So we click one button, and it automatically has done that search to find us 226 chemicals that have that formula. One simple click gives you the entire nature of that specific formula space. We've also built as much flexibility as we can into the interface to allow you to review the data. And this is simply showing you the chemicals. These are the CAS numbers for those chemicals, what the masses would be. When you see this type of representation, we call this a multiple chemical results page. If you wish to harvest these data directly into your own hands in a format that you can consume and use in a report, then we give you some easy ways to do it. Every time you see a multiple results page, you have one button click to pull down an Excel file. So what this is doing right now, it is harvesting the relevant data that underpins this particular data set. It is downloading 226 chemicals, and it will generally take longer to open an Excel sheet than it will to actually download it. So here we see the data downloaded, 226 chemicals with different types of information. INSHI keys I will tell you about shortly, but there's the UPAC name, International Union Pool of Applied Chemistry. This is the CAS numbers. And that data was one button click to pull down 226 chemicals. We can just as easily do that with 5,000 and integrate all of the other data that we have available. Let's go back to BPA. We have mass. I will show you later how we can do mass searches also. We have structural identifiers. So this is the systematic name, the UPAC name, while the chemical name, the most common one, is bisphenol A. For those of you who work with chemical structure informatics software, you may be interested to reuse the SMILE string. SMILE string allows us to take this, and it is a representation of the connectivity, the atom-to-atom, bond-to-bond. Very important for people working with chemical informatics. There is also something called the INSHI. The INSHI is the International Chemical Identifier. This allows us to hyperlink and access across the internet. So many people are not yet aware of this. It's been around for almost 20 years. For any particular chemical, we have a unique INSHI, an International Chemical Identifier. It's based on the structure itself. So if the chemical doesn't have a structure, it cannot have an INSHI. But when it has an INSHI, you can do some very, very powerful things. Anywhere you see blue on the interface, commonly it's going to be a hyperlink. So you want to understand SMILES or INSHI string, one click, and it will take you into a description of what that is. In this case, we're linking out to Wikipedia. So anywhere you see that hyperlinks, please feel free to click on them, and you'll be educated as to what these things are. I'm now going to take this particular INSHI key, and I'm going to search the internet for it and find everything we know about bisphenol A. So we just structure searched the web. So it has found bisphenol A on PubChem and ChemID Plus and sources that you can buy this chemical from, NIST webbook, etc. So we just chemically structure search the web. So if you think of any chemical, if it has a structure, you can search the web with one click. Linked substances. So if you have a particular chemical and you want to find all of its salt forms, or what particular substances, mixture of chemicals that particular structure might be in, then we've done that automatically for you also. So linked substances will allow you to see such things as all the salts. So here's the sodium salt, here's the barium salt. You can see the isotopically labeled variants of that chemical. And I'm going to choose a slightly different chemical to do this. I'm going to pick something up from, it's very common right now in our area of interest. And I'm going to load PFOA. So I'm sure many of you have heard of PFOA. So this is the perfluorooctanoic acid. So it's going to load that chemical structure, and we would like to find all of the various forms of this chemical. So this is the neutral acid. Now I would like to find all of the relevant salts, and you know, its presence in mixtures, etc. So this is the neutral acid. This is the ammonium form. This is a form. Click here, you can see this specific cation. You have the pyridinium form, etc., etc. So now we have just discovered all of the salt forms of PFOA that we have inside the application. There are also isotopically labeled forms. I can lift that filter, and you would see C13 labeled, deuterium labeled, etc., etc., etc. This is the C13 labeled form. So we've done all of this mapping automatically. It uses standard informatics tools. Now, if you're working in this domain, you might be interested in having a dump of these data, 23 chemicals, all that have the PFOA component in it. And again, once you see multiple chemicals, you can download it into an Excel file. And it pushes that file straight out with the CAS numbers, the names, the smile strings, etc., etc. So this is a very fast way for you to navigate from a single chemical out to related chemicals. And you can see them right here. There's 23 chemicals. So mixtures, components, salts, etc., all built into the application directly. The database has been constructed over many years. We've been curating data for almost 2 decades now. The initial database was built up to about 5,000 highly curated chemicals over a number of years, and then using programmatic approaches and informatics and a very rich team of curators inside the agency, we've been able to expand this, as I said, to almost 900,000 chemicals. Many of these come from lists of interest. So this presence in lists accordion right here, presence in lists, is clustering these chemicals together into the individual list that we have mapped. So inside our chemical registration system, somebody can send us a list of chemicals and say, we would like you to put this particular list of chemicals into the application. It expands the data set, but it will also remain intact as an individual list. So for example, looking through this, we have federal lists, we have state, international, and we have other. So these are our categories for the moment. And you may be interested to see the chemicals in the high production volume list. So what I've done is I've selected, and it is now loading 4,000, you can see it happening right here, 4,297 chemicals were loaded into your application. So on your web page, those almost 5,000 chemicals now are resident at the desktop in the cache. And here's all the chemicals. This list is explained in detail, the source of it, and where it came from, how it was assembled, etc. And we have over 200 lists at present. We will dive into each of those a little later. But I want to show you that bisphenol A is present in many of those lists. So it's part of our chemical inventory for doing bioactivity screening. It's on the ecotoxicology database. It's in the hydraulic fracturing database. So that's presence in lists. And then we have a lot of chemicals, but it's difficult to curate everyone to the highest level. So we will give you an indication of our efforts to curate the data. We have 5 levels of public data. We have two other levels that we have internally. That's the front page. Now we're going to go through each of the subtabs. The executive summary is going to give you a high-level view of the data that's available for this chemical. This tells you that there's an integrated risk assessment report available, and this is loaded directly from the IRIS webpage in real time. If anything is updated on this page, it will load it into the tab. So we don't have to keep continually chasing new IRIS updates. We just load the page. This is telling you that there's regional screening levels available. If I click on this outlink right here, that will take you into one of the other subtabs. Just want to point out an informational icon because you will see them across the dashboard. Wherever you see this eye, you can hover over it and it will tell you where the data are coming from, what the data represents, links to scientific publications about how we built models, etc. So those you will see as we move through. This is telling you that there's a minimum oral point of departure, a toxicity value. And this is available in this table right here. These outlinks navigate you across the application. It's telling you that for this particular chemical, we have reproductive tox, chronic tox, subchronic tox. All of these data are available inside the application. We have some indication of phys-chem parameters for this individual chemical. And don't forget, 875,000 chemicals. We have some representation of the bioactivity assays. This chemical has been pushed through almost 1,000 ToxCast assays, bioactivity screening assays. And this is, so 989, it has been screened through 989, and 211 of those bioactivity assays have active hit calls. The chemical is deemed to be active using our pipelining approach, deemed to be active in those assays. We will dive deeper into the data. And then these are endocrine disruption. Oh, there's another informational icon. I can hover over that and I can see what this is displaying. This is a display of the different points of departures data that we have for this particular chemical in the table. And then down here we have a display of the bioactivity data with descriptions. Each individual data point is explaining the nature of the assay that has been studied in. You can see different classes of assay, what targets those particular assays are probing. So this is a summary view only, and it kind of gives you a representation in one page of the data that we have available through the rest of the application. So we're now going to navigate through these subtabs. Properties. Chemical properties are very important for the purpose of identifying potential fate and transport issues in the environment, whether or not a chemical is hydrophobic or hydrophilic, that's the log P property, what the water solubility would be, how soluble would this be, how much could you find in your environment based on its ability to dissolve in water, etc. So when we don't have experimental values, and you can see by these dashes, we don't have vapor pressure, flash point, density. They may exist somewhere in the world, but we have not been able to harvest them as yet. When we don't have them, we cannot show you experimental values, but we have been able to predict them. And we've built rich prediction algorithms to do this. I will show you those. But anytime you see a table, because what we have is experimental, predicted, we have predicted median, range, etc., etc. Again, download an Excel file and it will download all of these data for you into one single Excel file. But I'm going to dive into log P. So log P, we have the source of the data. We have one value, and we have the source of the data, FISPROP data set, plus we have multiple predictions. We are agnostic to where those predictions come from. We believe that multiple models is more beneficial than showing you simply one. But there are models that we've built ourselves. One of our postdocs who has moved on now, but while he was with us, built the OPERA models. He continues to maintain them even though he's left the agency. And we can show you more about this model than any others that we have. So if I click this, we now see that we have this distribution of log P values that we used to train the model. you can see the overlap of the training and test set predictions. 14,500 log p-values were used, and you can even see the nearest neighbors in the training set that were used to build the prediction. We give you an indication of our confidence in the prediction, so these particular values, these applicability domain index values and confidence levels are indicating, as well as this word inside the applicability domain, is indicating to you that we are confident with this particular prediction. Those predictions have been performed for over 800,000 chemicals across 13 different endpoints, and we have millions and millions of those reports available one click. So just to show you again what type of models we've been able to build, we have things for etc., as well as environmental fate and transport. So bioaccumulation, bioconcentration. So these are properties and fate and transport. Continuing the journey down the subtabs, and we won't have time to go into all of them. Now we're looking at hazard data. So these data have been assembled into a database called ToxVal, stands for Toxicity Value Database. This is work led by my colleague Richard Judson, who over the years has been working to pull data together from multiple databases, over 30 databases.
Right, Tony.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt, but you stopped sharing your screen.
Oh, I did. Interesting. I have a feeling that my
yeah, I think you lost connection. Yeah.
My internet.
You can open them. Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid it looks like my internet dropped. Looks like we have an internet. Oh, it's connecting again. So there was an internet outage that just glitched. I'm getting back in right now.
Teleworking issues.
One of the challenges of working from home. Right? So I'm sharing my screen again. Please let me know when it's up.
Yep, it's back.
Okay. Whew. Thank goodness it was a short outage. All right. So we are looking at the ToxVal database, as I said, and this is going to represent data for over 50,000 chemicals. My recollection is we have about 750,000 individual toxicity values of different types. So these tables are quite easy to navigate. You can hover over any of the informational icons, so you can see when there's a dotted line underneath. You can hover over this information and it will explain to you the type of data it is. These columns, you can change it into what your preferred view of the data is. And we have toxicity values, points of departure, screening level. So all of this complexity is represented directly in these tables. And again, where you're pulling together now years and years of data from over 30 databases. Anywhere that you choose to get a data table of interest, again, download it to an Excel table. So if you wanted everything about BPA that lists military exposure guidelines or reference doses with all of the source information, just one click and it will pull it down into the Excel table for you. And these data continue to expand. We're always forming new collaborations, working with other databases to grow this data set. I'm going to skip into exposure for a moment, and I'm going to talk a little bit about bisphenol A, but I'd like to show a couple of different chemicals because I think they're quite interesting to look at. So bisphenol A is used in multiple product uses, and maybe you know some of these. We hear about BPA in plastic bottles for drinking water, etc. But it is commonly used in adhesives, and it's listed as being present in 17 unique products as part of the adhesive formulation. Underneath this application at the moment, we have about 75,000 products that have been mapped to chemicals. There has been an ongoing effort for approaching 2 years now, led by some of my colleagues, Kathy Dionisio and Kristen Isaacs, who have been building a new database called ChemExpoDB, and it contains over 1 million mappings now between chemicals and products. And we are working very hard to mesh those data in for the next release. So it will be an enormous explosion in data where you will be able to see what chemicals are in what products. I've told you before, wherever you see blue is normally a hyperlink. So let's click on adhesive and see what we get. And now we're back to that similar view that we had at the beginning where I said, type in diaper and see. This is the same view. These are 2,270 chemicals that have been identified as being present in adhesives. So that's through this particular interface. I'm going to switch to a different chemical for a moment because many of us will have applied this chemical to ourselves this morning, whether we know it or not. If you showered, if you've applied lotions to your body, etc., then you've almost certainly been exposed to methylparaben. And here's the product use categories for this chemical. So let's display 100 rows here. So it's used in hair conditioner and body lotion, face wash, shampoo, eyeliner, all of these things, sunscreens, all the way through. And methylparaben, because it's present in so many products, we have done the work to extract the information directly from the safety data sheets. And here we have 1,481 rows. It's going to be much bigger in the factotum, in the ChemExpo release. Factotum is the application we use to build it. You can see where the data came from. So it's the retail product categories from Walmart or drugstore.com. All of these data are available. It's coming from the MSDS sheet or safety data sheets as you know it. These are the individual products. Ageless Reflections eye treatment. I need some for sure. And the weight fraction when it's available in the safety data sheet has also been extracted. So we have over 1,400 rows of information giving you weight fraction information when we have it, giving you the product name and the category that it's in. And as I said, this is about to explode. If you're interested in how these data were pulled together, an informational icon will lead you to the publications. And functional use data, what is methylparaben commonly used for? It's as a fragrance or colorant. And we've also got functional use prediction. This is built by a colleague, Catherine Phillips, who was able to build models using the chemical structure and the functional use so that the functional uses could be predicted. What other things could that be used for? I'm going to go back to bisphenol A for a moment and close the exposure tab. There's a lot more exposure detail available, but we don't have time to dive into all of it. So I mentioned that we've been doing bioactivity screening. So if you recall, bisphenol A has been studied in almost 1,000 individual bioactivity assays. These are the individual data points. I was showing this before. This is the same visualization widget. And now here are all of the data. So there's a lot of data here that can be downloaded and used. We use this for the purpose of modeling toxicity. We also use it for in vitro to in vivo extrapolation. We build IVE models, and that's represented over here in our ADME subtab. Similar compounds I mentioned. This is now finding chemicals similar to bisphenol A with one button click, and I'm going to hide chemicals that are isotopically labeled. So now we have a set of chemicals that are similar to bisphenol A, and I'm going to hide the multi-component ones. So now you can browse through this data set. Related substances. This allows you to see, again, the salt forms, transformation products, environmental degradants for bisphenol A. Synonyms. This shows you all of the names, all of the CAS numbers. People believe there's only one CAS number for a chemical, but you will find that there can be many. We have chemicals in here that have over 300 deleted CAS numbers. I'm going to show you the literature. So Google Scholar This is an integration between Google Scholar and our application, where I want to find all of the hazard data associated with bisphenol A. And what it's doing is it's creating a query term that I can search directly in Google Scholar. And all it's done is pass that query term over. However, we've built something a lot more detailed technically for integrating to PubMed. And in this case, I want to find everything to do with the hazard for this chemical. And it's created a specific query that is very expansive and uses appropriate terms to search against PubMed abstracts. When I do that and I retrieve the articles, it hits 30 million abstracts and brings back a set of articles. And now I'm interested in whether or not bisphenol A may be an endocrine disruptor, for example. So this is a count filter, and this is the actual abstract associated with this article. It's downloaded the abstract, and it's starting to count through that information for me. I might be interested in, for example, homeostasis. Homeostasis. You can see those terms being highlighted. So this can be done across all chemicals, searching for particular terms. Not only do we can we look for hazard, but we might be interested in looking for impacts on male reproduction, downloads a new set of articles. This is called Abstract Sifter, and we've built a version that runs directly in Excel. The link farm allows us to link out to other applications and websites. So if I want to find for bisphenol A, if you look through the links, they're very self-descriptive, or you can simply hover over them. I want to find the mass spectrum for bisphenol A. One click, and it links you to the mass spectrum. Maybe you want to find the article on the EPA Substance Registry Service. So it will take you into bisphenol A on the EPA's SRS. What I've been showing you so far is all one chemical. All of these subtabs have an entire level of depth, but I'm going to go quickly to batch search. I'm going to show you what I could do with batch search. So I'm going to simply type in a set of names. Of course, you could paste them in here. You can mix them up with CAS numbers, and I want to display those chemicals. So that's the batch search. But we could also download information for thousands of chemicals. And to do that, I'm going to go to the lists of chemicals. I told you we have multiple lists under here, and I'm going to pull a particular list of interest. So I'm going to go to drugs, and I'm going to find a list of statins. So here's 51 particular chemicals, and now I'm going to send those to the batch search. Now I can download all of the data of interest. So we've predicted properties. We have measured these chemicals in bioactive into ToxCast. We have the formula, the mass, et cetera, et cetera. And now what you can do is simply select what you'd like to include in the download file. Click one button, and it will download it into an Excel file for you. So you can do batch searching in this way. I want to show you one additional thing, and that is at the prediction level, you can do real-time predictions. So we don't have all chemicals of interest. You may have a chemical such as atrazine. We have atrazine in the database. We just pulled it. We pulled the chemical structure. But maybe there's a form of this chemical that has been detected in the environment and we don't have it. So this, for example, I've just drawn this because I think I've identified it in my analytical chemistry. Now I'm interested in properties for this chemical, and we can generate these predictions in real time. So these are the physical chemical properties, and these are predicted tox properties. It's about to take this chemical. It's about to hit a server, do the predictions. It's going to do 4 different models in real time and give us a consensus. That happened in real time. And now I can look at the predictions directly and a detailed report. So that was real-time prediction for all of these tox endpoints and physical chemical endpoints. And you can see under here, we have no experimental values. these are all predicted. So that's real-time prediction. So I'd like to show you everything now pulled into one single report for a set of chemicals of interest. So I'm going to pull this list. So we have 174 chemicals. And you can see what the type of chemicals, allyl alcohol, carbon tet, hydrazine, etc. I'm now going to send that to the batch search, and I'm going to download the data. So everything I've shown you, we are now going to assemble that for 170 chemicals. And I've told you could do it for 5,000. I'm going to pull the SMILE strings, the formula, the mass, some predictions. We're going to see whether or not there's predicted exposure, whether or not we have bioactivity data. Is there hazard data available? How many articles are there in PubMed about the chemical? Is there an IRIS report and a PPRTB report? So whatever I'm selecting, it is now going to query across a set of databases, assemble those data into one single report, so multiple complex queries, assemble it into one report, and format it in a manner that you can use at your desktop. It's going to produce a single Excel file. So once you can consider, it's pulling these data together for 174 chemicals. And imagine how long this would have taken previously for you to know what, for a particular input, because we input a set of IDs, what the names are, the SMILE strings, the formula, the mass, whether or not we've got predicted exposure, whether or not there's hazard data available, whether or not it's been run in bioactivity assays, ToxCast, Tox21. This is telling you this chemical was active in 3 out of 235. Whether or not it has an IRIS report associated with it. Everything's blue is a hyperlink. You can see all of the predicted properties, boiling points, density, flash points, etc. How long would it have taken historically to put 200 identifiers in, names, cast numbers, and harvest all of that data into an Excel format for you to continue to use? This has been a very quick overview of, hopefully you don't see it as too complex to use, but a lot of complex infrastructure and software architecture has made this happen. We're trying to make it more consumable for you as a community. Hopefully you've been able to see the potential value to yourself. I will stop there.